All right. Let me start by welcoming everybody and introducing myself. I'm Cheryl Dell'Osso from Zenfolio, and I'll be hosting today's webinar, which is travel photography tips for capturing stunning images like a pro with our guest, Laura Grier. As I said, feel free to enter your questions at any point during the presentation, but we're going to wait until the end for Q&A.
Awesome.
Zenfolio is really excited to sponsor this webinar with Laura, who's been a Zenfolio member and ambassador for Zenfolio for 7 years now. So thank you, Laura.
Of course.
A little bit about Laura. Laura spent the past 22 years working as a photojournalist on all 7 continents and has made a life out of exploring the world, capturing and writing about her experiences. And it's my pleasure to welcome our guest and amazing photographer, just
Thank you.
all around great person, Laura Grier.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm an adventure travel photojournalist. I shoot for National Geographic's Artisan Catalog, which if you were in the conversation a few minutes ago, we were chit-chatting about my hat. I started a hat company working with the same artisans I've been photographing for the last 20 years, and now we're in business and partnership with each other with exporting artisan goods, and lots of different experiences through that. And also I do a lot of travel tourism. I'll shoot for hotels or cruise lines, tourism boards, which are essentially the PR companies of every state and country, and also just supplementing photography for different writers that I work with a lot, and then I do my weddings and events and things like that. So I'm kind of doing a whole bundle of things.
I don't know where you find the time, honestly. That's pretty amazing. And I'm sure we all want to know how we could possibly do a little bit of that. So our first question for you, Laura, is how can someone who doesn't have any experience get into travel photography?
I mean, a couple of things I would suggest. One is, I did an internship with National Geographic in DC when I was in college, but I think just interning, there's a lot of different travel publications, blogs, even like Thrillist or Matador Network or any of these kind of travel online publications. They're constantly looking for contributors, and a lot of their contributors are writers and they're not really good at photography. And so you can always either partner up with existing writers that you find and say, hey, I'd love to supplement your articles with my imagery and things like that. Or the other way too is if you build up a portfolio, obviously having your own blog is really helpful because a lot of travel photography involves writing as well. A lot of publications want you to be able to do both and be an actual photojournalist. So I think showing and self-publishing your work with a story attached is really helpful. And I can't tell you how much content out there people are needing. They're constantly needing travel content. And so a good way that I suggest is there's a website called Trav Media, TRAV Media, and you can create a profile on that site as a journalist or a photographer, just a media person. And then they have a show every year. One of them, the big one, is called IMM. It's International Media Marketplace, and it's in January, usually in New York. And that's a great marketplace to go to because it's all editors, all the tourism boards go there, all the journalists and writers, and it's a great way to network and to find basically it's a speed dating between travel media people and editors. And so editors, everyone gets their budget in January for the year. So they have a budget to bring journalists out, to bring photographers out, to go on trips to showcase their location. So let's say the Board of Tourism of Austria wants to showcase the new Schnitzel Festival, which is actually a true thing. This happened in January. So they want to bring photographers or people out to cover the Schnitzel Festival, and they'll have a budget to do it. So you just have to sort of meet people and find out what they're looking for. And so if you already have a library of imagery, you can always say, hey, I've got amazing images from Mexico or here or there. Would you like to use them? So that's also a great thing too, is if you want to shoot images from certain places and have it on an easily accessible like library on your website or something, you can actually reach out to the tourism boards of those regions and say, hey, I've got amazing images from this place, like, would you like to use it? So these are like a lot of ways to kind of get in and to meet the people that are really needing the pictures, but also finding out what they want. And then based on that, you can either be invited on a trip to go do that, or you can just go out and shoot it and submit it to them. So for me, that was like a really helpful sort of place to meet other travel media people.
And you do a lot of blogging and storytelling surrounding
Yeah.
the photos, don't you?
I do. I mean, I have to say, I wish I was like better at it, because I feel like I'm writing for so many other publications and things like that, that it's hard to have the time. But it is important, even if I have my assistant sometimes blog for me, and I'll leave her like a voice memo on WhatsApp from where I'm at, and just explain like a crazy fun adventure I just went on. And I'm like, here are the images, here's the story, and then she'll transcribe it and blog it for me, because I'd rather, while I'm like waiting for my coffee or on my way to some destination, voice memo it. And sometimes I don't have the time to sit there and type it. So there's also ways to get, if you don't feel like having to sit there and do it, just having an intern or someone help you with that too. But it is important to show that you can tell a story through words, not just images.
So at this point, are you choosing the destinations yourself, or are you being sent by publications to go places?
I'm kind of mostly choosing them. So for instance, like at the show I was just talking about, I went and said, I really want to go to Japan. I really want to go to this region of the world, over to Uzbekistan or whatever. I chose regions I either hadn't been to or that I was very interested in going to. And then a few regions that I'm very familiar with, like visit California. I spent a lot of time in California, and sometimes I forget about my own backyard. And so I was very specific about who I talked to and who I reached out to, because it doesn't have to be just like a giant net that you throw out there and like hope to get something. I think everyone can be a little bit more intentional about, where they want to shoot and what they want to do, because it doesn't make sense to go somewhere that you don't really feel connected to or you're not familiar with, unless you really want to go there. So and I feel that way, by the way, about wedding photography and any type of photography. I always went to hotels that I really wanted to work at for a wedding, and I would make meetings with their marketing director or specifically do a styled shoot there. So I would have images from there to blog about, to promote, because I would want to attract weddings from there. So I think we can all, you can cast a smaller net and be very specific about where you want to be.
So for these destinations, how do you plan and research so you know where the best places are and opportunities for photography are, especially if you've never been there before?
Well, this is another reason why reaching out to their tourism board is really important. And you can find a lot of the tourism boards through Instagram, or just Google it, like tourism board of, Australia or whatever. And there's probably 15 different ones for different regions, but they will work for you as like for free, almost like a fixer, because their job is they want to get beautiful stories and imagery and people to come to their locations, right? So if you reach out to the tourism board and say, hey, I'm a photographer, I'd really like to do a styled shoot here, I've been dying to go here, I'd like to write a story about what adventures there are to do in South Australia, they will be more than happy to be like, oh my gosh, these are the restaurants you should go to, these are the hotels, this is where you should stay, this is our person that can help you organize this, like that.
Wow.
They use them as a fixer, because that's literally their job, is to make their location look under the best light, right? So they go out of their way to help any journalist or photographer with any types of questions like that, at least in my experience I've found. So I think, even if you're not getting hired by them to go somewhere, they're still a really good resource to help you almost be like a fixer on the ground, or just to answer questions like that. And then obviously you can like research online and just kind of look up what are the best weather times to go there, what, are there any festivals, what's the, you can just do a lot of your own research. But I think if you're just going in and you don't want to go off of TripAdvisor or booking.com, or to find out what the best places are, I think asking the tourism board, they always know like what most people don't know. They'll know like the new things that are about to open, the best spots, like they're sort of in the know about that.
That's great advice. And what about some of your stylized shoots where it looks like places that nobody's ever been before? How do you find those places?
Well, some of my stylized shoots, for instance, okay, let's go to Sri Lanka. I did a workshop in Sri Lanka and we wanted to go, I had like 12 women and we wanted to go to all these iconic places all across Sri Lanka. So I had a Sri Lankan coordinator that helped me a little bit, but I also did a lot of the research through, Insta famous places or what are famous images that people have shot for National Geographic in Sri Lanka, and kind of like looked at some of those like images for inspiration and then found out how to get to those places. And then I would talk to local people like, what's the best time of day? How should we do this? Um, and it was crazy because a lot of these places that you would find that were Insta famous, like maybe the Instagrammer went to the parking lot of the entranceway of a place, but never actually hiked it or did it. So our whole vibe was we're gonna, debunk the Insta famous places and show you like what it really takes to get there and what it's really like. And I found that the places were even more beautiful and cool than Instagram let it on, because usually the place that becomes famous on the image is like not the coolest part about that location. So I had a little bit of help from local people, and then I found out about like a famous pilgrimage up to this Buddhist temple that it was really hard to get to. You had to climb like 7,000 stairs to get there. And then I found out about this one image from National Geographic of the stilted fishermen in Sri Lanka. The men stand on these stilts in the ocean and they fish. I was like, we have to find this place. And so I had to ask locals for that one. So sometimes you're just kind of, showing a picture and being like, how do I find this place? But I a lot of times an entire trip I've done or a workshop has been planned around being inspired by one image I saw somewhere. And then I was like, I'm going to create a whole adventure trip to get there.
It sounds like communicating with the locals and getting to know the culture is a big part of your photography.
I mean, yeah, I guess you would say that. I mean, I think in the beginning when I first was traveling in my 20s and shooting pictures, you would just kind of walk around and be like, oh, that's cool. That woman with the really wrinkled skin, I want to photograph her. And I would shoot everything sort of long lens and just almost like stealing images here and there of whatever I was attracted to. And I found that didn't really help me later on when I was trying to write an article or to do any type of travel writing, because the images didn't really go together. It didn't tell a story. They're just these sort of disjointed images of random people that I didn't really get permission to photograph. And so I find that in order to get a lot of my images sold or published, you have to have a release and get their permission. And some of the best pictures you have are when you actually spent the day with somebody and they know you're there and they've invited you into their house and you've had a meal with their family and you're shooting with a 50mm lens, like right in their face. And like, that's, you're going to get way better images doing that than just stealing with a long lens, like an image from the side when they don't know you're taking it. And so, and with that being said, there's a really easy, it's literally called Easy Release app on your cell phone that you can download and have on your cell phone to just have anybody there sign a photography release, model release, location release, things like that. So whenever I'm traveling, I don't need to like have a piece of paper or physical pen or anything. You could just have someone do it on your cell phone.
That's super handy.
Yeah.
How do you get the confidence to go up to someone that you don't know, especially in another culture, maybe a language that you don't speak, to make that connection?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, my work with National Geographic helped me a lot with that, because we would already have the relationships with a lot of these artisans and have the permission to go into their villages and photograph them and meet them. And so I met a lot of locals, through, and they have offices in like 9 different regions around the world. And so the Nat Geo office has always worked almost like little fixers for me as well for all their photo shoots. So I've been able to call upon them a lot of times being like, hey, I'm going to Thailand. I'd love to meet these kind of artisans. Could you help me find this person? And so I find that you can't just like walk into a random village and start photographing. And, a lot of these villages don't even accept tourists. So I think that there's always local tour guides or companies that work with them. So a lot, like, let's say that you want to meet artisans that work in Guatemala, you could reach out to a clothing company or someone that's maybe working with those artisans and ask them if they will give you permission to visit them for the day. Because a lot of these companies, like our hat company does it. There's nonprofits all over that set up, trips to go meet artisans. For instance, Intrepid Travel, they have trips to go meet up with artists and stuff all over. And so you can get that experience. And so I think there's a lot of ways to get, because it's important to have a translator with you and permission and, you know, they're expecting you and that sort of thing.
So how many people are in your entourage? Who do you bring with you? Who do you need? Like the absolute bare minimum of people?
God, I mean, a lot of times I'm doing things by myself, which is crazy. And then I'm finding people that help me on the ground on location. But in general, I think the most I've ever traveled with was 3 other photographers or assistants. Like I have to keep it pretty minimal. Not only is it kind of just a lot to bring a lot of people and gear, and I think, you know, even just my own gear, I keep very minimal. So everything I have has to be portable and carried and
you carry all your own gear.
Carry all my own stuff. So all my photo gear is always my carry-on when I'm traveling. Like if it doesn't fit in carry-on, like I'm not bringing it. And so I have a tiny drone, like my Mavic Pro Air. I have a tiny portable softbox, like a Lowell softbox. I use my Canon external flashes with like a little sleeve on top of the Canon. So I can just put the little flash in the portable softbox and create a studio, you know, all battery powered. I'll have extra batteries. I'll have like a charger for my phone. I use my cell phone and like a little Osmo gimbal for it as steady cam for video. I only really use the main video in my camera if I have a tripod and I'm sitting there doing something on tripod, but anything motion video I do on my cell phone. And so all of those things together, you know, I bring like maybe 3 lenses, a couple camera backs, all of that in my laptop. It fits in my backpack. And I use a Peak Design backpack, which I think is the greatest photo backpack ever.
Can you spell that?
Peak, Peak Design. They are the best. I mean, this thing has gone through hell and back and it's still like in perfect condition and it just holds so much. And it's like a smaller backpack, but it holds everything, like my laptop, my lenses, my this and that. And then I'll have like a side second bag, like either a roller bag or backpack, depending on where I'm going with my other gear in it. So I just have a backpack and like a smaller bag, and that's all my photo gear that I bring. Because there's things like, you know, hiking Kilimanjaro or like hiking to some of the villages I've had to go to where there's no power outlets. There's no way to roll anything. You just have to carry everything. So you just have to figure it out and be portable. And yeah, so that's my best advice on that.
So I've done some hiking and photography, and I found that tripods can be super heavy if they're stable. So I think it's one of those hard things to find something that's light enough to travel with, but stable enough that, you know, a nice gust of wind's not going to blow your camera over. Do you have a recommendation for a good travel tripod?
Oh my gosh. There was one that I bought years ago and I now don't have it, but for years it was like Go Me. I think I got it at a travel. I think I got it at WPPI, and it was one of the best little portable. It was only like a couple pounds, travel tripod. But they make a lot of really good, like Manfrotto and stuff like that. You can get lighter ones now. Like I think before they used to be such tanks, but I feel like they're doing a better job. I don't have my personal tripod in front of me right now, but I have a little baby one that folds up, honestly, like this big, but it's a full tripod. That the only thing with that one is that if I was shooting with a 70-200 lens on it, I wouldn't want to like just leave it by itself. I feel like that would be a little top heavy, but other than that, it's been pretty stable. I think it's a Manfrotto, my little one that I have right now.
We could probably put it in the comments after the.
Yeah, I need to look at it again, and I'll find the name of the other one that I used to have that I got at WPPI. Like just off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I'll add it to the chat later.
I settled on one from Three Legged Thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're out of the UK, and they have some really great tripods and heads, and good for video and still photography. So that's another one to check out. So lenses, you said you have 3. What are they?
If I had to pick my favorite 3 to go on assignment, I would choose my 50 prime, my 1.2. I would choose my 16-35 wide angle, and then I would choose my 70-200 if I had to choose 3. I love my 24-70 as well. That would be like my next choice. But honestly, you have to have a telephoto, you have to have a wide, and then you have to have like a very, very fast, portrait lens. So there's a lot of times just you're in super low light situations and you just want to have that like super low depth of field and everything, or high depth of field. So I would say those are my go-to lenses, but I can't tell you how much I use my 16-35. There's something about, for all my landscape stuff, like to get those epic clouds and that sort of like distortion and everything, it's just a magical lens.
Can you repeat the, sorry, I'm backtracking here and I said I was going to take Q&A after, but the name of the app for the model release, was it Easy Release?
Easy Release.
Easy Release.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check that right now, but it's Easy Release. My stock agency was actually the one who told me about it because I was having that issue where I was going on location and not being able to have a release on me. So this one really helps. It's super, yeah, it's Easy Release.
Great.
It's not a very sexy looking app. It's just like a piece of paper with a pen on it and it says Easy Release.
Yeah, whatever works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next question. I kind of got off track a little bit there, but I think we got some good information. So composition, obviously hugely important in photography, and you have a way of composing shots that just draw you in, come back to them, just they pop. How do you compose your shots to make them so interesting and dynamic? And I know that's a really broad question, but are there
it's a broad question. No, but it goes back to a lot of the techniques that they teach you in photojournalism school, right? I think there were like 12 main principles, and I'm not going to remember all of them, but a lot of them are low angle, high angle. So like we're all used to shooting at eye level, but just lay down on the ground or get up high, or even changing your angle can completely change the perspective or like the feel of the image, or like shooting where you're showing part of the ground or something, or I always just try to remember to think cinematically, like if I was shooting this close-up person, what would it look like if I was 50 feet away? What would it look like really, really far away if they were tiny? So sometimes you have to remind yourself to go far away or up close or down low or up high and just try to get a different view, or pretend that in your brain that you have like a second shooter with you. Where would they be standing, right? So maybe go try to do the second shooter view after you're done getting your initial shot, just to kind of think outside of your own brain at that moment. It's hard. Sometimes I have to force myself to remember doing that. The other thing is patterns. Looking for patterns and repetition is really striking and will catch your eye. Obviously, I look for color and I look for color contrast. So if it's like a bright blue sky, the contrast of blue is going to be yellow or orange. And so I'll look for something that's really striking, like that color that can pop against it. Same thing with, other colors like red and green and things like that. And then just the rule of thirds that everyone has, where you're not always, centering things can be really, really beautiful and just very geometrically pleasing and symmetrical. But also doing the rule of thirds where, you can kind of see behind me where I've got a fan that's like spread in thirds. Like if I was just like on the left third, or your subject was sort of on the right third, that can be really, interesting to change it that way. But shooting through things, like finding a fence or a hole or a cave or a tree, or like trying to find some sort of object that you can frame your picture, will help make it really interesting. And I think something that they really, really taught in photojournalism school was that they wanted you had to have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. So if you look at a lot of Nat Geo shots, you'll see that there's a person blurry in the foreground, like maybe like they're protesting, and then like the main subject that's in focus is maybe in the middle ground, and then the background is like some epic scenery. And they always set things up where there's multiple layers like that. And it just adds more depth and story to the image. So looking for layers, looking for, like I said, things to shoot through. Trying to think of some of the other principles of photojournalism. It was also just having, like I said, patterns, waves. Oh, I know, leading lines. So I love using leading lines where you see the perspective of a building is going to like lead right into your subject. Or maybe when I do my goddess shoots and I have like a big piece of fabric that I attach to someone's dress, instead of that dress being off to the side, I'm going to grab it and pull it towards me. And sometimes I'm even holding it while I'm taking the picture. So it looks like the dress is coming at you in the
I can think
image.
of
And
several of your shots that
yeah, and it draws you in. It
great,
literally
yeah.
is a swirl or a line that's like drawing the
color
person into the
contrast
picture.
too.
Yeah, and that too. So sometimes you're using all the things I talked about. You might be using 4 in one picture. You might be using patterns, color, leading lines, low angle. It might be all of those things combined in one picture. But those are some of the main principles that they always taught us to look for. You know, because a lot of times you're going out and shooting as a photojournalist, like at least in the beginning, like let's say I'm a news photojournalist and you're shooting, I don't know, like a ribbon cutting ceremony or like some political event. It's not that exciting, but if you choose to shoot it in an interesting way like that, you can make the image more exciting.
Do you edit your own work?
Yes, I do. I love editing my own work. I think it's like my special sauce. I love using Lightroom. But I'm not gonna lie, I just discovered Imagen AI recently, and it was a game changer, more so for my events, because for me, it's really fun to edit my travel stuff and to edit my portraits of people, but editing, you know, the event coverage or like all the things that are a little tedious just takes a lot of time and it isn't necessarily the most exciting for me. But Imagen AI, you can just batch process, like just send all your images and within an hour, it edits them for you in the way that it thinks you want to edit. So you submit and upload and create a profile of like 3,000 images that you've already edited that you like personally, how they're edited. And then the AI will try to match like the way you edit. And that has saved me hours and hours of time. I just started using them this year in the last 4 months. It's been a game changer.
I know we could do at least one whole webinar on editing, and actually Laura did
We
a
did.
PA webinar with Zenfolio a few months back. So if you're a PPA member, you can find that on their site, recorded, where she went in and edited a bunch of beautiful photos to show exactly what she's talking about, making them pop.
Yeah. And that was the first time I ever like threw myself under the bus. It was sort of like a before and after makeup tutorial where I've never shown anybody my raw images, and it's not like they're horrible, but it doesn't obviously look like the final product that I create. So
No,
to be able to
your raw images
there,
are what most people get after editing. So yeah, there's definitely nothing to be embarrassed about there. But from what you told us in that webinar, are there any tips, a few tips, maybe your top 5 tips on editing your travel photos so they get that special sauce, that special pop?
Yeah. I mean, for those of you that I use Lightroom, and for those of you that are proficient in Lightroom, I use their filters, especially now. They just in the last few months upgraded all of their filters to have subject background filters, gradient filters, graduated filters, all the different, they've like all these different filters that you can use. So for me, I can select the sky in the background with their sky filter and then instantly add like a polarizer or a dehaze filter, like slider on it. And you just really get those clouds to like crunch and come in and be like super vibrant and poppy. And it just looks like HDR without it looking HDR. You know, I don't love how like crunchy and ugly like HDR looks. It's just a really pretty poppy version of making the clouds pop. And you can do that with your foreground. You can do it with your subject. Like if you have a backlit subject, you can just click on the filter, like subject filter, and you can even have 4 people on the photo, and it's smart enough to know the 4 people, and it'll create a separate filter for all 4 people. And you can lighten and darken just those people accordingly, or just the background without the people, and bring down the background and make it more vibrant without affecting the people in the picture. And that has been a game changer using all of their filter settings. So it's like the little button in Lightroom. I guess I have to like look at it so I can describe what it looks like. It looks like just like a dotted circle on the far right top of the tools in Lightroom. And if you click on and it says like, when you hover over it, it says masking. We click on it, you've got subject, sky, background, linear gradient. You have all these options. That hasn't been my special sauce, is using the masking like that. And then also I don't like sharpening in Lightroom. I don't sharpen anything there. If I do sharpen, I do it in Photoshop. I feel like if anything, I actually make the soften the pixels a little bit, because I just want to make those nice skin tones and all of that. But I really don't like just blast everything with saturation and color. I think everyone thinks I just like pull the saturation thing all the way up, and that's what I do. I just add a little bit of contrast and make the darks dark and the lights light. And I just, when I do that, it automatically makes your colors more vibrant. Even just by doing those 3 little sliders, like contrast, bring your shadows like brighter and your darks darker and your highlights lighter. And so you're just kind of you're like crunching it and making it really pop and making it feel crispy and light, like where the whites are really white and the blacks are really black. So that's the main thing I do.
Masking, like masking really comes in handy there too, because you might not want the subject to have the same kind of treatment as your background if you're, playing with saturation or any kind of tinting, etc. Like you don't, if you make the sky more blue, you don't want your subject to be blue.
Nope. And the masking is great because if you have, let's say you have the bride and groom against a blue sky and there's like 57 images of it. If you select the subject masking and all of it, it uses AI to select the subject, and you just hit like batch process all 50 whatever pictures. It'll use its AI to find the subject in each picture according to that picture and do it. So it's not, before you used to have to just do a gradient filter. And then like if every image you had, the horizon was a little higher or lower, you'd have to like adjust it for each image, and it took forever. And now the AI on the filters is insane. It's really, really amazing. You should definitely try it if you guys haven't played around with those masking tools.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much from that last webinar that I went in after and started playing with it. And I couldn't believe, and it's not that hard either.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. That makes me so happy to hear that you did that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So as we said, your raw images have to be, in good shape for you to come out with the images, the final product being as amazing as yours. Do you so this is a hard question to ask. Do you have any rules about when you're shooting as far as exposure? Are you shooting, using the light meter, keeping it right in the middle? Are you using a histogram and watching your highlights, make sure you're not blowing? What is your
the histogram annoys me. I never shoot with that. It bothers me. I don't know, like visually. So I mean, I learned shooting on film. And so I think for me, we used to our rule was we would overexpose skin tone at least a stop, sometimes 2 stops. So I always kind of expose for the face of my subject, even if the background, goes a lot lighter. I know that I can bring that back in and raw. Obviously, if I'm at a point where I'm blasting out the background, there's no information, I will choose to bring in the background a little bit and not shoot that way. And then I can always bring the subject out later on. But in general, when I'm shooting for me overexposing like a stop for like the person's face that I'm shooting. I shoot everything in manual, and I usually shoot very, very, as low, wide open as I can, 2.8, whatever I can shoot, unless I'm shooting group shots of people, unless I'm doing a landscape where I want everything in focus, not just the foreground. In general, I'm shooting very low depth of field. So, but I think because I learned on film, I never went into digital photography like, oh, I'm going to blast this on like rapid fire and take 2,000 images and like hope to get one good one. I mean, that's just an editing nightmare. And I just don't want to edit that many images, right? So for me, I still time things. I time the moment. If I see a loose hair on the person, or if there's like a leaf on the ground, I'm going to like walk over and remove it and not be like, oh, I'll just fix that in Photoshop later. Cause I don't want to fix it in Photoshop later. Like, I don't want to take the time to do that. So I'm still in the mindset of as if we were in shooting film, and if every exposure costs me money, which it did back then, you're going to learn to do it right in camera. So I think, those are usually my rules, but it's amazing what you can bring back from life on raw. Like if you have a super, super dark image or super, super bright image, you can bring a lot of it back. But you don't want to shoot that way because you don't want to like blast it to the point where you're going to make things look pixelated and whatever. But in general, I shoot for people's faces.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually someone who loves the histogram because I can see when I've blown out the background.
Yeah.
On my viewfinder, I have it set so that if I blow something out, it turns red and blinking, which is totally annoying, which probably
It's really annoying. That's why I don't do. I mean, I understand why it's good.
I can flip it back, and when you're used to just shooting manual and you do things fast, it's like I see that red. I know, my finger does it before my brain even can figure it out. So interesting.
I know everyone, there's so many different schools of thought on that one, but
it's just cool. It's cool that the cameras have so many different ways and choices to do things, so it can suit your style.
Mm-hmm.
So do you get to enjoy your trips, or does it feel like work?
I mean, I always enjoy everything. I mean, there is no separation for me between work and play. And, even when I'm sitting here spending time with my family in Virginia, I'm like ironing hats for a hat show. And then I'm doing a photo shoot tomorrow. Then I'm like, everything blends all together all the time.
If you follow Laura's Instagram feed, you already realize this.
It's crazy. Even my dad, who was like sitting next to me, he's like, huh, who knew? Because he's like watching Family Feud and I'm ironing hats on the floor. And he's like, who knew that you'd go to school and be a professional photographer for Nat Geo and you're just going to be sitting and ironing hats one day. I was like, thanks, Dad. But it's one of those things where you never know what's going to happen with your career. And I use my photography all the time in my hat business. And I, met the artisans through my photography, and these artisans also are like helping me with a nonprofit I'm forming. And it's just, you never know what your connections are going to be. But I love what I do. I really, really love shooting photos. I think the only time where I'm not having a good time is when I'm just not sleeping enough. But in general, if I, plan my life well enough and I can get rest, I'm enjoying all the things I'm doing and all the travel I'm doing. But I think it is important to make sure that there is rest built in. I mean, even now with like certain clients I've had, I make sure they fly me in a day early, and I make sure that I have time to edit and downtime and things like that, because it's really important to build that in. It's going to make you like a happier, better photographer. So that's my only thing I would say, is that I need to be a little better about that. And I now build in a little bit extra on some of my bigger jobs for like a 2-hour Thai massage, because I'm sorry, but like a 15-hour or multi-day Indian wedding wrecks your body. Like it really does. And I finally realized that you have to have a level of, whether it's yoga or some sort of massage or self-care that needs to happen. And I build that into my packages because it's part of the deal, and it's not that much, when you think about it. So I think that's important too. But yes, I do enjoy all of it. I wish I could clone myself and have more hours in a day and all of that. But other than that.
Do you travel just for fun without shooting for somebody, or you combine it all the time now?
I mean, it's hard because I kind of combine it. Like, for instance, I'm going to visit my sister who lives in Paris in May, but I'm not going to not bring my camera, not only because my family expects me to do free family portraits for them, which is always the case, but then, I'm going to be going to new, beautiful places I haven't been. And then those images I can license to my stock agency. Like if I didn't have my camera, I would want my camera. So even as a tourist, I would have my camera. So I don't consider that work, but I could never just travel without my camera, especially if I'm going somewhere new, because I would want to document it. And it could be something that could make money later on. So I think that that's the part that I'm saying, that it's still fun, but there's still a level of, I'm thinking of like ways I can repurpose things and multitask and stuff like that. But I mean, it's my gift that I give to a lot of my friends and family is photography, or I'll want to do like a styled shoot somewhere cool. So yeah, I think I'm always blending it. I mean, even with the hats, like I'll wear a hat and I'm going on a trip, and of course I'm going to want to like shoot pictures of me in a cool place wearing the hat for the hat company. So I don't know. So there's always like things that I'm thinking about when I'm on a trip, even if it's just like a vacation, that ends up being kind of a blend of work. And same thing with work. When I'm on a work trip, I'll extend a few days and make it a vacation too. So I don't know. It's all blended together.
Sounds great to me.
Or do you have any question? I can't see the questions in the.
I said
Okay.
we'd wait to the end,
Oh,
so
sorry.
we covered a few that popped up, but we are coming about to that time where we can take some questions.
Me photo.
But I
I'm just
want to actually ask one more thing that is, I'm sure everybody's going to want to know, is how can we learn from you in person? Where are you going next, and how can I come?
so it's funny, we had a couple trips that were planned earlier, and we had to push them just for various reasons. But in the fall, there are going to be a few trips. One is an Iceland trip. It's going to be sort of like a goddess trip where I don't know if any of you go to my website and look at the Kilimanjaro series. It's a women's trip where we're going to be shooting fashion goddess portraits along the way in epic locations. So that's going to be an epic, amazing journey. I mean, we're going to be going to places in Iceland I've never even been to either. So there'll
what's
be
involved in that? Do you teach? Do you
yeah, I mean,
do the tour?
a lot of my trips are where I'm there for helping you out with your own thing, but it's a lot of it is adventure, and I'm just like a tour leader, and then we set up photo shoots along the way. So I will help facilitate setting up the photo shoots. I'll help people with their settings. Each person's going to be modeling and having their own pictures taken during that time. So it's really just like a fun empowering trip that involves photography, but it's not like I'm going to be teaching every day like how to use your f-stop and all that, but I'll be there to help with any type of need. It's more of an adventure trip that involves fun photo shoots for that one. And
So
then
is there a certain level someone should be at? Should somebody be comfortable with shooting in manual, any kind of equipment requirements?
honestly, on these trips, I always tell people bring your professional camera or bring your iPhone. It's something where we can teach on anything. I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't have good enough equipment to come. I think you can do amazing imagery on any of those cameras that you have. And I want people to be able to enjoy it no matter what level they are.
Okay.
And then other trips that we'll be doing are to visit our artisans for the hat company. So we do origin trips where everybody on the trip gets a hat, and you get to go meet all the indigenous artisans, and you get to learn about their cultural practices, and we'll be having permission to go into the villages. We'll do like portraits with them. But a lot of that is, all of my trips are mostly like we create amazing opportunities to come back with an incredible portfolio from there, but it's not a hardcore every day there's photo instruction. But we'll usually do photo shoots during the day, and then at night we can have a discussion over dinner over like questions people have or like thoughts. And then I'll usually do one evening where I'm talking about like editing tips and things, sort of like that seminar I did. So it's very relaxed. It's like going on an epic trip where at night you're having sort of a fireside chat about things, and during the day you're taking incredible images and having like an adventure. So we'll be doing
How many people usually?
the most I ever bring on these trips are 12. So it's usually like 8 to 12. They're pretty small. And I will be doing more trips to Africa like next year. Like our Madagascar trip is probably going to be in the spring of 2024. It was supposed to be this spring, but we had to push it. So that's going to be an upcoming photo trip as well to Madagascar. And then there is a potential North Pole adventure, Greenland and like northern Arctic adventure that will be later in the year, probably winter time. I know it seems like counterintuitive to go in the winter, but that's actually the best time to go.
Have you been?
Yeah, so there's going to be that trip TBD. We don't have the dates on it yet, but we have the actual trip planned. So that would involve being on a cruise ship that makes different stops, and you would like a Zodiac boat to different places.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And which website has all this information? Is it your lauragriertravel.com?
Yeah, so Laura Grier Travel, when we post the dates, everything will be found there. So if you want to just join or follow me on Instagram, or like, I believe the newsletter's on the site too. If you join that, we'll be announcing all of that, and we'll be posting it on the trip section as soon as we have all the dates. But yeah, so the upcoming ones will be fall, Guatemala, Peru. And then Iceland will be also probably October, November. And then Madagascar would most likely be February or March of next year.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
we have a few questions. Let's see. What is an inexpensive piece of gear that is super valuable on a trip? An inexpensive piece of gear that's valuable. So
There's a lot of valuable things. I would say portable chargers for everything that you can get portable chargers that you can actually plug your, regular outlet for like your computer in, as well as USBs as well. I can't tell you, I think my biggest thing is having power. Especially since my drone has to be flown using my cell phone, right? And I use my cell phone as my video. I use it for social media. I also use it as my navigation and everything. So it's like, it's constantly draining. So I think having a portable charging device is really, really important. But I would say, honestly, just having like the little mini, you can get those like LED panels that are portable, that you don't need to plug in. And those have been really helpful, whether you're interviewing somebody on camera or you just need like an extra pop of light in a dark place. Like that's been really great if you don't want to use on camera flash for portraits and things like that. So having like a little LED panel, I would say, has been helpful. My GoPro, be able to shoot underwater and doing things like that has been really helpful and super tiny and easy to use. Like I just went canyoning the other day in Dominica Island, and like I wanted to bring my big camera, like, but it's just impossible. You're jumping off cliffs into the water and like doing all this stuff. Like you just have to have, I don't want to do it with my big waterproof casing. So having like a waterproof underwater camera is really helpful. What other piece of equipment is super important?
something really cheap, like if you turned your pockets out or searched in like the side pockets of your bags, what's in there that you're like, oh, I'm so glad I have this
Oh
because
my God.
I need it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, my universal adapter, I'm like going back to
Yeah.
power. And I know it's so lame, but I get so geeked out over like having power. Honestly, this one's like not that cheap, but having a little mini steady cam for my cell phone has been a game changer. Like you can shoot so much cinematic stuff with that, and I use it all the time, and it's like tiny, but they range from $200 to you can get cheaper ones, but the Osmo is the one that I love. But gosh, what would be the cheapest like tiny little thing that's in my bag?
I've got bungee cords that are just hanging out in there.
I mean,
Like
zip ties. I don't know. I'm like, I'm
yeah,
honestly, zip
hair
ties are,
bands.
yeah, having things like that, having like the little carabiner things. Um, let's see. I honestly, even having like the little plastic sleeve for your cell phone, like the waterproof thing that you can put around your neck. I like, you get them, they're so cheap. Those things have come in handy so many times. What else? I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, other
That's
than
okay.
those
We can
things.
move to the next question. Ben asks, who do you use for framing your prints?
Oh, so I mean, Zenfolio obviously does like a lot of my printing, and you guys use MPix, correct?
MPix and Bay Photo. Mhm.
MPix and Bay Photo, they're great, but for the extra large pieces I have that unfortunately MPix and Bay Photo can't go past a certain, I can't remember what it is, like 24 by 30 or something. For my super large format stuff, I use Marco Fine Arts, and they're incredible. They similarly to MPix and Bay Photo do, print on bamboo, print on metal, print on acrylic, do framing. They do all the things, but they can do it really large format. And
Do you
they're
do a
based,
lot of framing or do you print more canvas and acrylic metal without
my
framing?
my new jam is metal. And the reason why matte metal specifically, because I've done everything, like all the artwork in my house is acrylic, just because it was stuff I had printed for this one gallery show. And I have huge windows in my house. So it's just glare, 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 glare. And I did an art gallery show in the Peruvian embassy. I did a whole, like, which is now living permanently at the Peruvian embassy. And we did matte metal, and it was amazing. Like there's no glare at all. And I was worried about I never printed on metal because I was like, oh, it's gonna like kill the color or dim it a little bit. And in fact, it doesn't. It's really, really, it still was vibrant and beautiful and looked
Tons of
almost
depth.
like archival paper a little bit. So I'm a huge fan of matte metal.
Yeah, depending on how big you want to print, both MPix and Bay Photo through Zenfolio do have metals of different sheens too. That you get the high gloss
Yep.
or
Yeah, you can get
the
the high
matte.
gloss or the matte.
Yeah, if you have a lot of windows in your house, definitely go with matte, or you're just going to see the reflection.
And metal's so much lighter than acrylic. It's a lot easier to hang. But the only caveat is that acrylic, you could like kind of tap it or whatever, and you're not going to ruin it. If you like scratch metal, like you've scratched it, that's it. So obviously you're not going up to an art piece and like clawing at it or anything, but it's just one of those things where you could more easily ding it than other things. But I haven't had an issue. It's been awesome.
When you do frame like a fine art piece, do you go with a simple frame, a black, a white, or more of a gilded or elaborate?
I'm more minimalist on that, to be honest. Most of my stuff is unframed and it's just like a full bleed, acrylic or metal. But when I do frame, I either go just classic black or I do like a natural wood, and I usually matte it, as well. So I go really, really simple and classic when I do frame.
Well, your photos have a lot to say, so I don't think they need to compete with the framing. Another question: how do you take care of your gear while you're traveling? You're showing places where it looks like there's water and sand, humidity.
Yeah, I definitely have to get my stuff overhauled and cleaned a lot. When I come back to, I got Canon. I'm a CPS member, so a Canon Pro Service, so you can ship it off, and like within 2 days they have it back to you. And in general, I calibrate and kind of clean my stuff once in a while because it gets banged up. And I photographed a wedding this past year at Burning Man. Let me talk to you about destroying your photo equipment at Burning Man. Like you do everything, like tape it, do all the things. Right? Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like that dust gets everywhere. So that was crazy. But I think for me, I'm just really good about keeping my lens caps on. The other thing that just sounds like a no-brainer, but I always turn my camera off before switching my lenses, because your camera is like electromagnetic vacuum. And if it's on and you take your lens off, it just like sucks in everything, like the electromagnetic stuff. So you're gonna get a lot of dust spots and stuff in your camera if you don't turn your camera off when you switch lenses. So I always turn my camera off when I switch lenses.
Those dust spots are horrible too.
The worst. And I have the little, turkey baster thing where you like squeegee it, like, you have all that stuff. But I'm just really good about having filters on my lenses to protect the glass and to have like my lens caps and, all that kind of stuff.
You do put a filter over your
clear one, just to protect it, like banging it around or anything like that. Yeah.
Do you ever use other filters? Neutral densities, or you do all that in post?
I do it all in post. I used to have filters. I think it's such a pain in the ass for me to be switching filters all the time. And then you're just getting stuff trapped in it. And I just like didn't, I'd rather keep one filter on there that protects it and then do everything in post production for like polarizing and stuff like that. So yeah, I really don't use polarizer filters like on I own it, but I just haven't used it in a long time.
Have you ever thought of your own line of camera straps?
That's really funny that you should say that. We just asked our artisans if they could make like guitar straps and things like that. And I guess it would be intentional straps, because you can choose which one. So the answer is yes, it's going to happen soon. I haven't,
I didn't even know that. That was just out of the blue.
No, that's really funny. I was like, no, we just asked them about it. Well, because this company asked us if we could do guitar straps, and I'm like, we could, we just never have. So yeah, camera straps would be really cool.
Because my question was going to be what's your favorite camera strap, or kind of, some people have harnesses and all these things, because you're carrying at least one camera at a time, right?
Yeah, I'm not like a multi-camera carrier. I'm not like a harness person. I don't know. I don't like things like being strapped to me all the time. So I'm definitely a one camera. Maybe I'll have like a side bag with some lenses kind of person. But I think that yeah, I don't know. I think I just like feeling like the freedom of being able to move around through quick places quickly. And I just don't like having a lot of stuff on me. I don't know, but I think the camera straps, I don't have like a favorite one. I'm pretty lame. I use like the regular Canon camera strap that it comes with. I actually, that's not true. I did get a new camera strap and I can't remember the brand name, but it has like the split, um, it has the two straps where it splits. So it's better on your shoulder. It's not just all the weight on one. It like separates it into two. So it's a little, cause I get really, really tight neck and shoulders
Yeah.
all the time. So there is like a camera strap that can be, that's easier on your neck and shoulders.
Something to think about when you start designing your own.
I know. Now I got to think about how I'm going to design the artisan camera straps. I got to do like the same thing.
So we are coming up on the top of the hour. If anybody has a last minute question, here's one. Actually, I'm sure you have been everywhere, but is there anywhere that's still on your bucket list?
My bucket list, I swear, it keeps getting longer and longer as I've gone places, because you hear about new places you've never been. Papua New Guinea is high on my list. I, believe it or not, have not been to Turkey. I've like flown through the airport, but I haven't spent a lot of time in Turkey. So I'm really, really, really want to head over there. But my main thing is I want to do an Eastern European road trip. There's
Wow.
like, I could hit like 15 countries in like one road trip, and a lot of them I just don't know that much about. Like Albania and, Estonia and like I just Moldova, like there's like so many different random places out there. And um I'm at 88 countries right now. So I'm like, I could probably hit 100 if I did an Eastern European road trip, but that wasn't the main reason why I wanted to do it. But it honestly, I think it would be so cool to just explore on a road trip and kind of learn a lot on the ground and just understand the geography because I'm driving, right? So that's something I've always wanted to do. But for me, my jam is going to places where there's still vanishing cultures and indigenous people. So I would love to do like the Eagle Festival in Mongolia or Siberia, or visit the tribes in Papua New Guinea, or like things like that are sort of more on my list than, going to a 5-star spa in Europe somewhere, which those are nice too. But I think photographically, I'd like to, I'm also an advanced diver, so I'm trying to hit as many reefs as I can before those disappear. So, I just went and swam with the sperm whales in Dominica Island, and I'm
All
like, I
that.
want to go to, oh, it was amazing. I want to go to Tonga. I want to go to like, there's Raja Ampat in the Indonesian islands. That's supposed to be the most spectacular reef on the planet. So there, and it's really hard to get to. So there's like just things like that I want to see a lot of these vanishing reefs and cultures before they're gone.
Well, we will be watching your Facebook, Instagram feed, your website to see all the exciting things that you do next. Is there anything you want to share with us before we sign off?
Sure. I mean, going back to the getting started in travel photography, I still feel like I'm learning as I go, and I've been doing it for years. And I think that if you're not a writer, my boyfriend's a travel writer, and I support his articles and go on a lot of his trips all the time, because writers get invited on trips and then the tourism board doesn't always think about photographers. So I've pitched a lot to the PR people or the tourism boards being like, hey, could I come as the photographer on your trip, and I could stay in my boyfriend's room? It wouldn't cost you extra hotel rooms or anything. And a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, we didn't even think about that. Great. And then they'll, bring you on a trip or hire you. And so a lot of times, even just partnering with a writer, and supplementing them can turn into a lot of jobs and stuff too. So even though I've been doing it for a long time, I'm still pitching. I'm still having to pitch ideas. And it's not like there's a magical company that, Nat Geo hires me here like 5 or 6 times a year, but they're not my main form of income. And so there's not like one magical company that hires you to do a lot of these travel jobs. Most of the time you have to pitch an idea, reach out to them, decide you want to do a shoot there, like come up with that, and then somebody will fund it, so there's still a bit of a hustle involved. So yeah, I just think that that's the best advice, is to either partner up with a writer or reach out to tourism boards. And but seriously, everyone should join Trav Media, that site. It's a great travel media resource platform.
Thank you for all the tips and pieces of advice, and just all around sharing your secrets with us. Thank you for being a Zenfolio ambassador and joining us and supporting the Zenfolio community.
Thank you guys. Always. I love Zenfolio and I love telling stories. So anytime, and you guys just follow me and then I'll announce all the trips soon and hopefully you guys will want to join.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. If you have any other questions, you can probably put them in the Facebook event chat. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Take care.
No problem. Bye.